Second highest paid, second highest ranked. Darian Mensah is finally getting some love.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
He doesn't get talked about like Cade Klubnik or Carson Beck, but could Darian Mensah at Duke, could he be the second best or even the best quarterback in the conference? I am Alex Donno. He is Kenton Gibbs. He's from Locked On Wolfpack. I am from Locked On Canes. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On this episode, there's a big On3 report that claims to have the top 10 highest spenders by team in name, image, and likeness. You don't see a whole lot of ACC presence on that list. What does that say about the conference? Is it good or is it bad? We'll talk about Pro Football Focus's top 50 players in the country. Should there be more ACC representation on that? Spoiler alert, Clemson is very well represented. But Kenton Gibbs, let's talk about Darian Mensah. So I was surprised, as were you, to see, and I respect Andy Staples at On3.com. It's a really good job, very good national college football analyst. Unsurprisingly, he's got Cade Klubnik ranked number 1 on his list of ACC quarterbacks. Now, once you get past Klubnik, most people would either say, a couple of the following names. Carson Beck, he gets some love at that number 2 spot from certain outlets. Kevin Jennings had a good season at SMU. He's back this year. That's a name that gets thrown out there. But Absolutely. The name that Staples went with at number 2 is Darian Mensah from the Duke Blue Devils, who no doubt very sought after with the numbers he was putting up. Kenton, he's going to have a big step up when it comes to competition in a Power 4 conference now.
You're absolutely right. He absolutely balled out at Tulane, and he did so as a freshman. These are the types of things that you don't see often. And I believe that you talk about second highest paid, the $4 million man here is getting paid that much because it's a projection into the future. Not only, hey, do we believe you can get it done right now, but going forward, we believe that we've locked you down because who else is going to show up and show out in a better way than what we're doing, number one. And number 2, who else was telling you they were going to show up and show out for you when you weren't a proven product at the Power 4 level? So I think that he is a fantastic player. I am a little worried about him this high for a multitude of reasons. Number 1, quarterback is the most dependent position in football. The supporting cast, is it there to get him to the level of like, hey, our offense is humming and he's to thank for it? They lost a lot of production, not even including Malik Murphy, their former starting quarterback. Obviously, he's replacing him, so we're not talking about that. But everything else, you still lost a lot of talent surrounding the quarterback there. And so that's a bit of a question. Obviously, you're talking about first year in this offense, first year in this system. Things are going to be different. He's going to have some type of learning curve in terms of kind of figuring out the lay of the land in terms of what this new offense looks like. And then the last part of this that I don't think that enough people are taking into account here, this is still a level jump. This is still a level jump. It's a level higher than where you played at before. So while I do think if you talk potential, if you talk, hey, who do you think will put up the best numbers over the next 2 to 3 years? I think that Mensah has a great case for that. But I think if you're saying outright this year, he's the second best quarterback in the conference, I'd say that's a very, very – it's a bold prediction. It's a prediction. I'm just not sure it's going to turn out to be one that looks great at the end of the year.
Here's what Staples says about Mensah. He says the Blue Devils paid a truckload of money to land Tulane transfer Darian Mensah, who probably was neck and neck with Washington State to Oklahoma transfer John Mateer for the title of most sought-after player in the portal. This time last year, Mensah was about to climb the depth chart in camp with a first-year coaching staff in New Orleans. After showing the nation his command, athleticism, patience, and efficiency, everyone knows what Mensah can do. He averaged 9.5 yards per attempt, tied with Miami's Cam Ward Indiana's Curtis Rourke and Ohio State's Will Howard for third in the nation, and he threw 22 touchdown passes with 6 interceptions. Fellow transfers, Andrell Anthony out of Oklahoma and Cooper Bartek out of Harvard. It's going to be one of his top receivers from the Ivy League. Will need to help by giving Mensah reliable targets. But Duke's other returning receivers might see their production increase with a better passer at quarterback. And their top returning guy is Quayshawn Brown, who I think was like their third receiver last year. But your point, Kenton, is very well taken that, Mensah, he can do a lot there at Duke, but how high he goes, if he can be number 2 on that list, it's going to depend on the supporting cast quite a bit.
Absolutely. And this is not a situation where I'm doubting Mensah. Like I said, if we're talking who has the best college career out of all these guys, I could see second easily, right? Even with all of the success that Carson Beck has had and likely will have this year at Miami, I could see, if you're talking individual pound for pound, best college career for the situations he was put in, I could see Darian Mensah finishing at second. My question is, if we're going second for the 2025-2026 season, you have to tell me you believe he's going to be better than everybody else this year. He has the talent. I'm not questioning the talent. How many guys have we seen that had the talent that needed a year to adjust, even with a star-studded supporting cast? A la Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow in year 1 had stars everywhere. He looked all right. And then in year 2, he took off like a rocket and was unstoppable at LSU. I predict a very similar path for Mensah, because this year, a lot of instability in terms of talent and who's coming back, who's not. I'm not saying instability from a coaching staff standpoint, because they have that locked up. But I mean from a position of, you talked about losing the top 2 receivers. Even if they brought the top 2 receivers back, does Darian know those guys? Does Darian know how they run their speed outs? Does Darian know how they run their bang aid? He doesn't. So you talk about, what is it going to take for him to be successful year 1? I think it would take a Herculean effort, which, don't get me wrong, I think he's capable of, but I'm not sure I would say, hey, I'm going to predict him to put that out year 1. I think he'll be good this year. I think he'll be top 5, 6-ish this year in that range, but top 2 is a little bit rich for my blood, which I know is a very interesting adjective talking about the $4 million man.
I mean, for me, at the number 2 spot, I think you and I both agree, we would go with Cade Klubnik, which Staples goes with. But for me, number 2, I lean towards Carson Beck. Maybe my bias is showing a little bit. But if not Carson Beck, the other names I would consider Kevin Jennings and possibly Miller Moss, who is another one who's transferring in, but he's transferring into a really good decision with a really good head coach who's a quarterback whisperer in Jeff Brom. So I would lean towards those 3 names battling it out for number 2 before I would lean to Darian Mensah. But what do you make of the rest of Staples' list here? So, Klubnik 1, Mensah number 2. Then he's got Carson Beck 3rd, Kevin Jennings 4th, Haynes King 5th at Georgia Tech, CJ Bailey, your guy, number 6, Gio Lopez at North Carolina, number 7, which kind of seems like a leap of faith to me. Eli Holstein at Pittsburgh at 8, Kyron Drones at 9, and Steve Angeli at Syracuse at 10, who we're not even completely sure he's going to be the starter. They're sending Ricky Collins to ACC Media Days, so we'll see. But anything jump out to you from that top 10?
The disrespect of Haynes King and Eli Holstein is getting out of hand. Don't get me
at least like King, at least they've gotten the top 5, but Holstein down at number 8. I agree.
When we look at what Holstein did last year, when we look at what Pitt as a team did last year, it only fell off the rails because Holstein got hurt. Like that, the offense was humming. They were doing what they were supposed to do, and then one guy goes down, and the offense falls off a cliff all of a sudden. I wonder what that could mean, Donno. I'm not sure, but I would imagine if things grind to a screeching halt without one guy, I'd imagine that one guy is pretty good, pretty valuable, pretty worth something, But Eli Holstein continues to be overlooked when we darn near had to rename ACC Freshman of the Year the Eli Holstein Award for the first half of the year.
That's right. Every week he was winning that award.
I don't understand it, And Pitt fans, don't worry. I'm not trying to get back in your good graces because I still don't think Kenny Pickett was a first-round quarterback, but I think Eli Holstein is fantastic. I really do. Okay. That's one that I think, having him down this low, it's a little egregious.
Yeah, I mentioned, Miller Moss is someone that I could see having a good year, given that he's going to Louisville, because every quarterback who plays for Jeff Brom seems to put up numbers. Miller Moss is not even in that top 10. It's a little surprising to me.
Yeah, I agree. But I can understand it from the standpoint of the last time we saw him, although it was a much more ceremonious exit from USC than what Thomas Castellanos had from Boston College. Those are two guys that the last time we saw them, they were replaced by somebody else. So at least from that standpoint, I can understand the argument, despite the fact that he is going to have the best backfield in all of the ACC, despite the fact that he is going to have some weapons all around him. And the Brown brothers have proven when it comes to producing offensively, if can't nobody else get it done, it would take an act from the big man upstairs to put them in the bottom half of the conference offensively, regardless of who's at quarterback. Because remember, they had Tyler Shuck and convinced a team to take him in the top 50 in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Hey, give them their guts. They got it.
Did you see that there was this, and I'm sure it was just horrifically taken out of context. It was one throw, but did you see that one throw of Shuck at the combine where he missed his receiver by like 40 feet? It's like that guy was a top 50 draft pick.
When I tell people look at the Stanford film, Louisville Stanford last year, everybody's all like, "Oh, every player has a bad game," and I'm like, no. Watch that game and tell me that guy is an NFL prospect. If he had that game as a freshman, I'm okay. As a 7th-year senior, he's damn near a senior citizen playing like that. Get that nonsense out of here. Not hearing.
All right, when we come back, I was pretty compelled with Pro Football Focus. They put out their top 50 players in college football heading into this 2025 season. Now, Clemson, very well represented. Miami, kind of well represented, but there's not a whole lot of ACC love in this top 50. What does that say about the conference? You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Folks, we've been having a blast all summer long with FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing. And whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game feel more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. And hey, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com right now to get started. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen. For your next listen, make sure you check out our other shows. Kenton Gibbs does an awesome job with Grayson Boone hosting Locked On Wolfpack, keeping you up to date on all things NC State. I host Locked On Canes, keeping you up to date on all things Miami. I had a little rant this morning on Locked On Canes about the On3 NIL top 10 team spending lists. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first, Pro Football Focus top 50 players in the country. So, Kenton, we understand, I think, why, Clemson, they return such a high percentage of their talent, why they are the favorite to win the conference this year and why they are among the favorites to make a deep college football playoff run. You have to have talent to do that. And Clemson has 3 of the top 10 players in the country. Now, the team that gets the most love right out the jump is Ohio State. They've got the top 2 players in America, according to PFF, with Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver, at number 1, and safety Caleb Downs at number 2. But then for Clemson, you've got defensive lineman Peter Woods, ranked 3rd nationally, quarterback Cade Klubnik, ranked 7th nationally, and edge rusher TJ Parker, ranked 10th nationally. And then, Kenton, the next ACC players you have on the list, Miami's Ruben Bain comes in at number 15. And then I'm looking, no more ACC until you get to Miami's Carson Beck, ranked 21st. I don't see any ACC after that for a while until you get to Isaac Brown, Louisville running back, at number 28. So within the first 28 spots, you only have, one player in the ACC, not for Clemson and Miami. You got to go down pretty far to find other players in the that. How much of a reflection, Kenton, is that on the talent in the ACC, or is it maybe more of a reflection on the media perception of ACC players?
The latter, not the former. The perception is forming these guys' opinions more than the reality. I'll give you a prime example. Who was the top player for Miami?
It was Ruben Bain at 15, where I thought the top guy should have been Francis Maui-Noah, who I think is the best player on the team.
And who? So Francis was the second player for Miami, or was it Carson Beck? Was it Francis?
The third. Carson Beck is the second. Francis is not till the 40s.
So that's my point. You're talking about two guys with all due respect, right? Everybody knows how I feel about Carson Beck. Donno feels like I'm a Carson Beck hater. I disagree, but that's all right. Let's talk about Ruben Hurricane Bain. Love him down. Love everything about his game. Physical, violent, explosive, great hands, I mean, when he gets in the offensive lineman's chest, he locks him out immediately. I adore that young man. Watching his film, it gets me a little excited. It gets my engine going, okay? Now, with that being said, I would not argue that he was the same level of player as Maui-Noah last year. And that's with all due respect to him because of the injuries and the things that held him back last year. Now, even if we say, hey, fully healthy, right, at his peak, if everything, we're playing a video game and we turn the injuries off, do you think he's better than Maui-Noah? I would say he might have a slight edge, but even then, I'd give it a 1A, 1B.
Really, it's neck and neck. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That's what. Yeah. And listen, I'm not the guy who watches Miami every day. Donno is, and he's telling you that. I have seen these two go at their highest clip, and I'm telling you again, consistency aside, Maui-Noah is an animal. He is very likely to be either the first or second tackle off the board next year because he has not only been dominant, he's been consistently dominant. Dominance is the expectation from Francis. It's not like, hey, he'll have his up games, his down game. It's no. He's there. We're good for the most part. So, right. I think this is much more of a perception thing than anything. And Isaac Brown down to 28. If you can name me 28 players, here's how good Isaac Brown is. Louisville had a back that was averaging 10 yards per carry, over 30 carries in the last 3 games of the season. And yet, nobody thought to themselves, is there going to be an RB1 competition? That's how good Isaac Brown is. And you're telling me he's the 28th best player in the country? Yeah. Anywhere else. If Luke Watson is anywhere else, he is either the starter or pushing to be the starter. Because Isaac Brown is so damn good, everybody's like, hey, they're a great 1-2 punch. It's thunder and lightning, or lightning and more lightning in their case, because both of them can absolutely scoop. But he's the 28th best player in the country. Come on, man. Stop it. Even in today's game, where the passing game is taking the front seat, you can't tell me that he's down at 28.
Well, I'll give you the rest of the context, by the way, for the ACC. So in the full top 50, Clemson's got 4, Miami's got 3, Isaac Brown from Louisville, that's the one from Louisville, and then there's only 2 others in the entire top 50, and they're both from Duke. Safety Terry Moore at number 49, and then I think at number 31. No, sorry, number 20. I thought there was another. Oh, there is one. Oh no, Isaac Brown from Louisville, and then I know there's one more from Duke. I'll have to find it. Chandler Rivers. Number 30.
I was about to say Chandler Rivers' corner.
Yeah, it's got to be Chandler Rivers. So 2 members of the Duke secondary, a Louisville running back, 3 Miami players, 4 Clemson players. Nobody from SMU making that list, Kenton. Nobody from a pretty good Georgia Tech team. Florida State, they went 2-10 last year, but they got a lot of talent. Nobody from Florida State in the top 50. The ACC's not getting much love.
Again, Jamal Haynes, one of the best 50 players in the nation. Some of those big old hogs they got, that key is coaching up.
Yeah, they got a good offensive line.
There are multiple guys on the offensive line. And Maui-Noah is a great example of why I say these national lists, look at how they rank offensive linemen. And that's always the indicator to me of how much you know ball, because they have one of the hardest jobs that there is. And I'm saying this as a defensive lineman, right? Like I believe it's Will Campbell from LSU said, if I give up 1 sack a game, I'm working at Amazon. If a defensive lineman gets 1 sack a game, he'll be a first-round draft pick, even if that's all he can do. You know,
that's a great.
But I want to take it a step even further. We could include the running game. If a defensive lineman gets 1.5 tackles for loss per game over a 3-year career, he's going to be a first-round draft pick if he's got the physical tools. Look at Shamar Stewart, who's now back practicing with Texas A&M, but that's another story for another time.
Yeah,
the young man can't rush his way out of a paper bag, and yet because he was pretty decent against the run, he got it. You know, he got what he got there. So I look at this and say the lack of offensive line love, particularly from Georgia Tech, where they've got multiple guys on that offensive line that you're like, hey, these are maulers. They get people up out the way. That, to me, is an indicator that, like, hey, this list, you see some big names, you see some bright lights, all that good stuff. I'm not going to take it. I'll take it with a grain of salt.
Now, I'm trying to, like, lay out, like, a 4D chessboard here, because when we talk about, like, a lack of perceived top 50 players from the ACC, how much of it ties into the ACC apparently, with a few exceptions, not very aggressive when it comes to NIL and football. How do those two things tie together? Because On3 Sports laid out the alleged top 10 biggest spenders in college football. Not a whole lot going for the ACC. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode. Thanks for making Locked On ACC your first listen. For your next listen, be sure to check out the portal. Our pal Brian Smith, he does an awesome job. And I'm sure some of the stories we're talking about today are getting talked about on the portal from different angles from Brian. He talks not only about the transfer portal, about NIL, about recruiting. It's a heavy time of year for recruiting with a lot of verbal commitments coming down day after day after day. Make sure you check out the portal, available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So, I made sure to paint the full picture when I talked about this story on Locked On Canes this morning, Kenton, because, all right, so On3 Sports put out the list of top 10 highest spending teams. Now, here's how they came up with this list, because schools are not releasing exact dollar figures of what players are getting paid in NIL. They're not required to do that. They really don't have any reason to want to do that. So here's how On3 came up with this list. They said to get a better idea of who spent the most money building a roster for the 2025 season, On3 surveyed 17 stakeholders across college football, including head coaches, administrators, general managers, NIL collectives, and agents. The specific question was, quote, which 10 programs do you believe spent the most money to build their 2025 roster? So I call it the snitch list, Kenton. Like you're asking head coaches, administrators to say, hey, which other programs do you think are spending the most? So you take this with a grain of salt. And I appreciate On3's transparency. Like they tell you, this is how we compile the list, but this is not necessarily who's spending the most. It's who's got the reputation for spending the most. And the reason why I talked about this today on Locked On Canes, Kenton, was even though, like, you may think, oh, was Miami number 1, number 2 on their list? Miami was tied for 5th with Texas A&M. And yet, On3 is promoting this article with a graphic of Carson Beck that says $6 million, because they're claiming he's got incentives that could have him making up to $6 million this year. So even though Miami's not even top 4 for their own survey of top spenders, they're using the most polarizing player in college football, Carson Beck, and the most polarizing program, one of the most anyway, in Miami, to try and sell this article, even though they're not the top spender. But they've got in their top 10, Texas, Texas Tech, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas A&M, and Miami tied at 5th. Michigan and USC tied for 7th. Tennessee and Auburn. I definitely feel like, based on what I hear, LSU could definitely be on that list. I know Georgia has this reputation of, we're Georgia, so we don't need to offer you a lot of money. Believe me, Georgia's spending pretty big. But you notice there's only one ACC team on that list, Kenton. Now, there were a couple in others receiving votes, like others considered. Let me see. Florida State was one of the ones considered, and Clemson was one of the ones considered. But apparently there's only one ACC program that's spending big. Is that part of the problem when this conference apparently doesn't have enough talent?
Hey, listen, at the end of the day, even if we pretended, right, for the sake of this segment, we'll take this as the gospel truth, okay? Miami's the only one spending big money. Here's the only problem with that. It's not like these teams have the money to spend and are holding it back in their coffers. Teams just don't have it. What do you want these teams to do in terms of many of these teams? Their states are very meaningfully split between multiple teams, or these teams also have these teams in the ACC also are located in cities that have professional teams that mean something to them, as opposed to many of the teams on this list. With all due respect to the state of Miami, let's be very real. There are more Miami football fans than there are fans of any Miami professional team except maybe the Heat. The Heat are probably the only one that I would say is in that same ballpark. The Dolphins?
I would say the Dolphins. Yeah, the Dolphins have a lot of fans. They're miserable. They've been miserable for 50 years, but
But I'm saying, even if we include casual fans, even if we include fans who are like, oh, yeah, I like that team a lot. The Dolphins are up there with the Canes. Come on now, Donno. I don't think that they're quite in the same category. But again, you look at these teams and you say, who's fans or who has the support from the fans in a way that they can do things like, I believe was it Clemson or somebody that was like, hey, just give us $1 or $2 in NIL and that'll work out, because they had so many fans in their stadium. I mean, Clemson can do that because who else is in the state of South Carolina? Who's South Carolina's professional team? Basketball, anybody? Football? NFL? Hockey? I know good and darn well they ain't got no hockey down there in South Carolina. So you look at this, and that's part of it. But again, as much as people love to say, oh, you play for the name on the front of the jersey, you play for the G on the hip, whatever the case may be, at the end of the day, it's a new era, okay? This is employment. Obviously, I have hired and poached people from places that are paying a lot more than some of the startups I work for. So it's not all about the money, but the money is an important part of it. You cannot get an engineering manager from Google for $50,000 a year. You know why? They have a fun thing called golden handcuffs. It means that their pay is so high, they're not going to leave. And if Georgia wants to say they don't spend money, Zachariah Branch left USC to come down to Georgia just to win ball games when he doesn't know who the quarterback's going to be. Yeah, sure. I believe you, buddy. Again, all of these teams are spending. It's the nature of the beast. ACC teams need to come up with new sources of revenue. That's just about it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And something, and I agree with everything you said, by the way, except you downplayed the Dolphins a little bit too much. The Dolphins have more fans than the Hurricanes. You downplayed the Dolphins a little bit. And believe me, I am a Dolphin fan, and some days I wish I wasn't, because the team only makes me miserable. All right. But to add another piece of so some people would hear, oh, so Clemson was in like others receiving votes, but like Clemson doesn't spend any money. They barely use the transfer portal. Here's a part of this that people forget, Kenton, because when we talk about programs that are spending a lot of money, usually we're focused on, okay, who did they bring in through the transfer portal? A big part of spending, and the big programs actually spend more on retaining their players than they do on bringing in new players. And that's one of the reasons why Ohio State is number one on that list, and they probably belong there, because that, at Ohio State, they bring in players through the portal, fine. But they also, when you think about guys like Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith, there were these reports of Jeremiah Smith allegedly receiving up to a $4.5 million, maybe even more than that, to be honest, because if Carson Beck is making over $4 million, I'm sure somebody's offering Jeremiah Smith north of that. But reportedly, Jeremiah Smith gets a $4.5 million NIL offer from other programs. So Ohio State had to give him a raise to retain him. That's part of the business. Retention gets very expensive. And I do think, from what I understand, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, because I'm not locked on Clemson. I'm locked on ACC and locked on Canes. But I do understand that, like Clemson, even though, Dabo Swinney doesn't like to bring in a whole lot of new players, like he doesn't like roster turnover, he values continuity. That's why Clemson has the highest percentage of returning talent in the country. But an area where Clemson is willing to spend is to retain their own players. Like that, they feel like that's a better investment than bringing in outsiders from other places. So retention is expensive. And it's a part of this I hope people don't forget about, because guess what? Your player has a great season. As soon as that transfer portal opens, actually before that transfer portal opens, because tampering is a thing, they're going to be getting calls from intermediaries with offers from other programs. Retaining your players is not cheap.
Donno, teams are tampering? Teams are calling
Not Miami, but everyone else.
Everybody except Miami. No, but you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. And the biggest thing about retention, these guys have proven that they can do it in your system, at your school, on your campus. They've proven it. They've proven it. When you look at a guy from the transfer portal, for all that we talk about, Carson Beck, what is he going to be? Is he healthy? Is he not? Gio Lopez, what is he going to be? Is he any good at the power 4 level? Is he not? Same thing for Darian Mensah. We asked these questions of these guys because they weren't there last year. You know what questions we don't have to ask? Hey, what does Ruben Bain look like against ACC offensive linemen? Hey, how does Francis Maui Noah hold up against the TJ Parker or guys of that ilk? What does that look like? Because we've seen it. We have seen it with the exact thing that Cristobal wants to do, and insert player X and coach Y for whoever or wherever your team is, right? We've seen how Haynes King performed in Brent Key's system. We've seen how Kyron Jones performs in Brent Pry's system. We have seen this firsthand, so it makes sense that more of the money should be spent on, hey, we will keep high performers than it would be going to guys who could potentially be high performers. As the old saying goes, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush.
Amen to that. Well, we appreciate everyone making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. Remember, tomorrow, a new episode of The Squad is going to be dropping, so make sure you check that out. It's always fun when Jackson Holzer and Kenton Gibbs get together. There's always going to be sparks flying. So make sure you follow Kenton at Locked On Wolfpack and follow him on X at TGIF_Kenton. Follow me on Locked On Canes and on X at Alex Donno. And we'll talk to everyone next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.